6,000 police have been mobilised because of fears of more riots across the country. There are reports up to 30 protests are planned.
9 central London districts placed under elevated readiness. Dozens of transport arteries marked as high risk. About 6,000 officers redeployed across the capital. And a single phrase spreading quicker than police statements can contain it. Shut the capital. This is London at this moment. No official emergency, no announced lockdown. Yet, the city is preparing. After weeks of unrest, protests, and mounting political tension, Britain's capital has entered a different phase, one defined less by crowds in the streets and more by expectation. The expectation that disruption is no longer an anomaly, but a possibility built into the daily rhythm of the city. The message circulating online appears blunt, coordinated, and deliberately provocative. It doesn't name a cause. It doesn't list demands. It urges paralysis. And that is exactly why today matters. London is not reacting to a single event. It is reacting to a mood, a climate where trust is wearing thin. Authority is contested and public order depends as much on restraint as on manpower. Officials insist they are fully prepared. The public feels fragility. If you want clear reporting as this develops, take a moment to like and subscribe. Now, let's examine why the capital is feeling tense and what happens when a city prepares for unrest. Before it begins, 7 weeks of almost continuous demonstrations. More than 160 protest-related incidents recorded across Greater London since early autumn. Public order units placed on elevated readiness across multiple boroughs, not for a single event, but as a constant posture. London is no longer responding to unrest as a disruption. It is absorbing it as a reality. For weeks, tension has been building steadily layer by layer. Protest follows protest. Disruption follows disruption. Each incident on its own is contained, but together they have reshaped how the city feels. Londoners are no longer reacting to specific events. They are anticipating the next one. That shift matters because once anticipation replaces surprise, a city begins to change its behavior long before anything actually happens. The adjustment is quiet, almost invisible, but it spreads everywhere. Transport authorities quietly revise schedules around expected disruption rather than confirmed risk. Businesses shorten hours without announcements. Offices advise flexible working as a precaution. Parents time school runs around rumored gatherings rather than official notices. None of this is dramatic. All of it is consequential. What London is shut the capital calls spread online experiencing now is not chaos. It is saturation. Police sources describe a capital where public order planning has become continuous, rather than episodic. Each new call to mobilize resources draws from a system already partially engaged. Officers rotate through extended readiness. Command structures operate in overlapping cycles. The margin for recovery narrows with every week and the public senses it. When stability feels conditional, trust becomes fragile. People begin to question not whether a situation is under control, but how long control can realistically be maintained. That uncertainty does not require violence to spread. It spreads through silence, through absence of reassurance, through repetition. Recent rhetoric calling to shut the capital did not emerge in a vacuum. It landed in an environment already primed for escalation. Not because most Londoners agree with it, but because many already feel the city is operating on borrowed calm. This is the psychological pressure point authorities dread most. Not the protest itself, but the gradual acceptance of disruption. When repeated strain becomes familiar, it lowers the bar for future unrest. Each subsequent incident needs less force to generate effect. The city becomes more sensitive, more reactive, more fragile. Officials emphasize that contingency plans exist, and they indeed do. But contingency planning addresses logistics, not public perception. What London is grappling with now is cognitive instability. The sense that order is something negotiated day by day rather than guaranteed. That perception reshapes behavior long before it alters policy. London today is not panicked. It is alert. It is not collapsing. It is preparing. And a city that is constantly bracing is a city living with pressure woven in its daily tempo. London today is not reacting to a single trigger point. It is living inside a stance. Across the capital, the machinery of the state has shifted silently but decisively. Roads are restricted sooner than usual. Police presence appears in places where nothing is expected to happen. Transport hubs feel observed rather than protected. The message is not spoken openly, but it is unmistakable. Something is being expected. Senior officials insist this is standard readiness. But Londoners have lived through enough emergencies to recognize the difference between routine and anticipation. This is not a city responding to incidents. It is a city being arranged in advance of them. That distinction matters because when authorities prepare without clarifying why, uncertainty fills the space, And uncertainty is what turns tension into anxiety. Calls circulating online urging protesters to paralyze the Capitol have been publicly dismissed as marginal rhetoric. Yet privately, officials concede that language like this only accumulates power when it lands in an environment already strained thin. A city where disruption has become common enough that people no longer ask if something will happen, only where. This is the mental shift now shaping London. Police leadership maintains that heightened presence is meant to reassure, but on the ground, the effect is often the reverse. Barricades without contextual framing do not calm nerves. They provoke questions. Why here? Why today? Why this moment? And those questions are going unanswered. There has been no explicit explanation from City Hall or central government about what benchmark would trigger further action, or what conditions would allow the city to relax from this constant alert posture. The absence of that definition feeds speculation. Is intelligence being concealed? Is capacity being quietly assessed? Is London being conditioned for instability rather than shielded from it? Officials deny all three, but denial without openness does little to rebuild trust. What analysts point to is not immediate unrest, but the decay of normality. Cities function on expectation. When routine becomes conditional, stress compounds. Silently, police redeployment and transport risk zones, but persistently, commuters adjust paths. Businesses close sooner just in case. Parents check phones more frequently, not because something has happened, but because it seems like it could. That feeling is now pervasive. And this is where the state's response threatens becoming part of the problem. When preparation is visible but reasoning is not, readiness itself becomes a source of unease. Prevention blurs into incitement not by design but by interpretation. London is being administered as a risk environment, but citizens do rarely experience cities as blueprints. They observe them as atmospheres. And the feeling across the metropolis right now is not alarm. It is unease, a collective holding of tension, a sense that peace is temporary, fragile, and uncertain in sunlight. And that is what renders this instant so risky. What troubles London most is not the threat of unrest itself. It is the rising feeling that nobody is completely in control of preventing it. In recent days, authority in the capital has begun to feel fractured. City officials speak in one tone, police leadership in another, central government in a separate. Each statement carefully drafted, legally cautious, politically aware, and collectively hollow. The result is emptiness. In that emptiness, people do what they always do when clarity vanishes. They fill the void with interpretation, with conjecture, with worst-case thinking. London has endured protests, riots, terror warnings, and lockdowns previously. What made those times manageable was not violence. It was certainty. Clear lines of command, clear reasoning, clear signals that somebody somewhere grasped the full picture. Right now, that confidence is absent. Police claim they are ready but cannot discuss details. Ministers advise calm while declining to outline thresholds for intervention. City leaders talk about resilience without clarifying what occurs if resilience falters. So, Londoners are left reading between statements that were never meant to reassure them. Public sentiment shifts from reaction to expectation. This is where the narrative shifts from public safety to public trust. Because trust is what allows a city to absorb tension without breaking. And trust erodes not when authorities act, but when they seem to hover, hesitate, and waver. Calls to close the capital resonate not because most people approve them, but because they settle in an environment where disruption already feels typical. When streets have been blocked occasionally, when services have been stretched noticeably, when enforcement looks inconsistent or postponed, at that moment, the threat does not need to be believable. It only needs to be plausible. And plausibility is precisely what London is struggling with currently. Business leaders quietly acknowledge they are planning around disruption, instead of expecting stability. Transport officials confirm contingency planning has become semi-permanent. Residents speak frankly about avoiding areas not because of actual danger, but because of perceived instability. This is not a city in disorder. It is a city losing confidence in continuity. That distinction matters greatly because once people stop assuming tomorrow will appear roughly like today, behavior changes. Not radically, subtly, incrementally, but decisively. And governments often misinterpret that shift until it is too late. Downing Street insists London remains open, safe, and operational. Technically, that is true, but emotionally the city feels provisional. As if calm is being rented day by day instead of guaranteed. That is why police preparation alone cannot address this moment. Because the problem is not capacity, it is coherence. Who sets the is London being supervised or merely monitored? Line who explains the danger? Who takes responsibility if anticipation turns into escalation? At present, nobody is answering those questions directly. And when authority becomes abstract, influence begins to drift. not into the hands of protesters or agitators, but into the atmosphere itself, into rumors, into social media, into speculation that spreads faster than official reassurance ever could. London is not bracing because something has already occurred. It is bracing because it no longer trusts that someone will step forward before it does. And that is the most fragile condition a city can be in. As daylight fades, London is not erupting, but it is not relaxing either. It is waiting. Waiting to see whether tonight passes quietly. Waiting to see whether the warnings were precaution or prelude. Waiting to see whether authority reasserts itself or continues to speak in careful fragments. This is what makes the moment dangerous. Not the noise of protest, not the visibility of police, but the uncertainty that now hangs between them. London does not feel like a city under attack. It feels like a city under pause, where normal life continues but confidence does not fully return. Where people move, commute, shop, and work while quietly scanning for signs that something might tip. History shows that unrest rarely announces itself clearly. It builds in expectation, not explosion. In anticipation, not aftermath. And when a capital reaches the point where anticipation becomes routine, something fundamental has already shifted. Tonight is not about whether streets are blocked or trains delayed. It is about whether trust between the public, the police, and the state is being restored or further strained. Downing Street says the situation is under control. Police say they are prepared. City leaders urge calm, but calm without clarity does not reassure. It merely delays judgment. London has faced moments like this before. Some passed quietly, others did not. The difference was never just numbers or deployments. It was confidence that someone was truly steering the response. So, the question hanging over the capital tonight is a simple one. Is London being managed or merely monitored? We'll continue to track developments as they unfold. And before you go, we want to hear from you honestly. Do you feel London is being kept safe right now or simply being kept waiting? Tell us in the comments.